Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Cleveland Stater Podcast, and this series is titled Why I Love the Land. My name is Jack Barrett, and today I am joined by
Ryan Yuri,
Taylor Lewis Kerslake.
This episode will focus on sports in Cleveland, and we want to start off by discussing soccer at CSU. For men's soccer, especially look at last year and you look at that Horizon League championship, and you kind of look at the results so far this season, and it's been a little disappointing, 1-5-1 overall in the year, but they're in the thick of the conference schedule and they still have a lot of games left to play. So on that horizon, we'll see if we can turn things around. And on the women's soccer side, they're faring a little bit better. They're 3-5-1 right now. They actually just had their home opener against Milwaukee on September 14th. They lost 2-1 in a tightly contested matchup, but there's definitely a lot of positive takeaways right now, especially in the women's soccer scene.
I feel like it's very interesting for the men's soccer. I didn't realize until we started covering stuff this semester that it's such a big sport for international students. I noticed there's a couple students from Spain. There was a student from Serbia, all that play in the team. So I think it kind of flies under the radar at CSU. I know basketball is really popular, but even if they're not doing well this season specifically, soccer seems to be a lot bigger than people know it is at CSU at least.
Yeah, you look at a lot of the profiles on the soccer website, and you look at a lot of them played internationally on a lot of international clubs previously too. So
is that professional? Do you think, or do you?
Yeah,
or maybe it's their youth system.
A lot of
up?
youth club systems coming up, and then probably coming over here to maybe get more exposure.
Yeah,
I was at the Loyola game that the men's soccer played earlier in the year, and they were kind of doing the banner celebration for the Horizon League title last year, and it was a pretty good turnout for the home opener. So I haven't previously had a lot of experience with the soccer games or sports before this year, so it's been very interesting to kind of see that turnout.
I wonder if they got rings. That would be
really
cool if you got a giant
maybe
conference championship ring.
Yeah,
maybe not.
I feel like that's a good kind of thing to talk about too, though. You said how you'd never really went into anything before with soccer or even just CSU sports scene in general. I feel like we could have a lot bigger of a crowd for a lot of the games and stuff, but it's not advertised as much as we're on campus. I guess maybe just because we're a commuter school mostly, but I don't know. I kind of wonder why that is when we have good programs here. And I feel like anything I went to a couple basketball games, and even those, the turnout isn't as great when those teams are typically our most popular at CSU and it's still not a huge crowd. It's a little disappointing for the athletes kind of who are performing really well. I wonder if a lot of that goes back to not having a football team. I know we don't really have the campus for that, but I feel like a lot of schools who have a football team in college, that's kind of the central of everything, and then everything else kind of expands off that. So I almost wonder, I don't think it'll ever happen, but if we got a football team, if that would kind of spark interest in sports.
We were talking about the low basketball turnout.
Yes.
It kind of got me interested, and I started looking at Cleveland.com articles about the Wolstein Center's operating at a $1 million deficit every year. And I think that's definitely parts of you used to look at the new CSU master plan, the 10-year $650 million, and there's a plan to tear down the Wolstein Center and then replace it with a new basketball arena. So I'm wondering, you see this campus vision for less commuter oriented and more campus oriented, and I think changing that focus will definitely help with sports turnout in the future.
For sure. Even too, even if it is still a commuter base, just having something that brings people onto campus and wants you to stay here outside of just coming to class. Hey, there's a basketball game tonight, there's gonna be a huge turnout, it's against a rival school or whatever, and if there's a new stadium involved, maybe that'll kind of pull people to want to, one, visit the new stadium when it's done, obviously, but two, maybe people will be more inclined to go to games because the Wolstein Center isn't the greatest. We can all agree on that. So maybe having a better stadium where some of the sports and things are held at could benefit the turnout for all of the games.
And we just we added the esports program, right? And a lot of articles that I've seen is schools are basing their esports program, not just the sports side of it, but it's the facilities that they build for them become a digital sort of workshop for the rest of the student body. So you get this building with all the computers and all the setups there for your esports athletes, but then it kind of provides an opportunity for people who aren't involved in the program to take part in something new. If they're going to be a graphic designer, they have the amenities for
a
that.
focus on technology kind of. I think the campus could benefit probably too from if they include something in the new plan for the Wolstein Center to have facilities for that. Because like you said, it kind of like places an emphasis on technology, and it kind of shows that the campus is forward thinking, because that's obviously a big part of sports now. Like esports are huge. So if they hop onto like the bandwagon of that and get ahead of it and make a facility for it, it could definitely benefit them, I feel like.
Just something to double up and like bring students to the Wolstein Center. So it's
Yeah.
like the more traffic you have in there, you probably end up getting more fans just like if they happen to be there at 6 o'clock when a game starts, you know?
And too with revenue, since Jack, I know you talked about the deficit that they have right now and the lack of funds that they're making. So if they invest in a better facility, they would probably equal out, if not get out of that deficit and like dig themselves out of a hole. And kind of transitioning from that, I know a lot of people were upset when Quicken Loans Arena went through renovations and became Rocket Mortgage now. Not only, of course, people are upset about the name and things like that, but I feel like it's a bigger improvement than people thought it was gonna be. I've noticed a lot more events are being held there. The facilities are crazy. Like they're very advanced, and like they have kiosks everywhere. Like everything is cardless. Like you don't even really need to interact with an employee to like get a beer or get food at the stadium. And even too, I know they just did renovations on the team shop, and the Cavs team shop is crazy now. So I feel like if CSU focused on that, they might have a similar turnout.
There's already a giant sports scene here. Like you either have to keep up or you're just going to lose to this competition.
Yes.
Why would I go to a basketball game when the Cavs play at the same time? It's like that's just going to be a better experience, even if it's like $20 versus free. Like there's still a lot of competition there.
And it could just add to the already like established professional sports scene here if we had more competitive college teams that were more fun to watch or more worth it to watch if they're actually competing for something and they're not doing awful, which clearly we have good teams here. They just don't get enough traction or enough eyes on them. So I feel like if they, again, invested in like the facilities and stuff, it would add to that scene and kind of be another reason to bring people, maybe even outside the university, to come to a CSU basketball game.
Oh, we just recently had that big Browns-Steelers Monday night game.
Yeah.
You know, all the implications and big headlines and stories that came out of that. You look at the Nick Chubb season-ending injury.
It's a
I think
nightmare for all Browns fans.
I think I'd rather not look at that again.
Yeah.
It made me physically ill.
yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw it.
Well, and the fact that he had almost that identical injury before,
Mm-hmm.
not good.
It was one of those things in real time. It didn't look as bad as it was until you like slowed it down.
I had to seek it out because they didn't replay it on TV.
Yeah, and they're like,
you could hear the audience all audibly like gasp, and it was all Steelers fans. So you're like, oh, you know that's bad when they're even like, oh my god.
the announcers
So-
were even like, we're not showing the
Yeah.
replay for that on national television.
In addition to it being like a gruesome injury, they didn't want to like accentuate the heat that might have been on Minka
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick for going low
It's
on him.
hard too though, because a lot of people were saying that the NFL's been very like pro like tackling lower to eliminate the possibility for concussion. So it's like maybe it was a little bit like bad on his part, but it's also like he's just trying to follow like what's being told to him, and like it's kind of hard to like he didn't know he was going to injure him like that. But at the same time, I feel like in the eye of a Browns fan, you're going to want to be like, yeah, that was a dirty play.
Yeah,
So
100%.
Even you just look at the running back position, it's one of the most wear and tear positions. And their careers, like, there's such short longevity that they usually don't get those big, long contracts or paydays. So I'm interested to see, like, what the NFL, like, Players Association, like, I know, like, they're trying to get, like, awareness towards, like, injuries as a whole. And especially towards, like, before the game, I saw, like, they were specifically talking about, like, running backs.
okay.
And like kind of like feigning injuries or like kind of like heightening awareness towards running backs. I think it was just like it was very untimely that like that same night that like a Nick Chubb
that
injury happened. But
Well, even at the same time, like he's in like the perspective of life, he's only 27, he's pretty young, but for a running back, that's really old. So it's like this could really deter like the end of his career, like depending on how he recovers. So it's a bit scary for all the Browns fans. But I saw they signed Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, that's a positive.
He's going to be 2, but
I mean, it's definitely nice to bring somebody back into the fold who like has been there before.
he knows the system. He knows the team for the most part.
And it's like like Ford on the rest of that game had like 120 rushing yards. So it's like we still have 2 backs that are probably going to be like number 1 caliber type running backs, but it's just when the hometown favorite goes down. It's just never really a good
No.
thing.
I mean,
Not at all.
Ford had that like cutback, like 70-yard run in the third quarter. So I mean, like he was just kind of picking up where like Chubb was leaving off in that
Yeah.
game. And so, well, it looks like there might be like it's definitely like it looks grim because of the Nick Chubb injury. But you look at the Kareem Hunt signing, and it looks like there's still some stability
Oh, yeah.
in that system currently. But I'm interested to see what the implications like on the rest of the season are, especially after that injury, how the team's gonna maybe rally around that, maybe come together somehow.
I think Miles Garrett made a post on Instagram. Like, I don't remember the exact caption, but it was something like, we're doing this for Chubb. Like, so hopefully that mentality kind of pays off and it gets them to progress in the season and get some more wins, because it did kind of suck that they didn't end up winning that game. I thought maybe the momentum of like trying to win for him would come, but it just didn't happen.
I thought for sure going into it we were going to beat the brakes off the Steelers too. The
Yeah.
fact that it was that close was kind of
Yeah.
tough.
Sad.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
the fact that I mean like I saw a stat, it was like they have a 20-0 record at home on Monday Night Football,
The
or like
Steelers?
or not even 20-0. They've won like their last 20 at home on
Yeah.
Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
So even that made it a little more heartbreaking.
Daunting, yeah.
In
Well, let me give you some
hindsight
more
afterward.
heartbreaking stats. They
Yeah.
didn't run a single play, the Steelers didn't run an offensive play inside the Browns' red zone. So that all of their plays that they scored on were from outside of the 20-yard line. The defense didn't even let them in it, and they still lost that game.
Or even another stat I saw is that their defense was in the end zone more than their offense
Yeah.
was too. So
It's
That's tough.
painful.
it was as painful as a loss as it maybe comes
Yeah.
on prime time.
100%.
I mean, the positive is Deshaun Watson played really awful, so maybe it's just like the sky's the limit. He can't get any worse, can he?
Yeah. You never know.
And I know, like, traditionally, like, we're usually a Browns town. And I feel like usually when, Browns season comes around, you see, like, the Guardians traction maybe, like, slows down a little bit, especially
Oh,
this
yeah.
year because coming off a playoff, like,
Yeah.
wild card series win, and now it's just kind of sub 500. So you kind of look at, like, the traction's kind of dying off
Yeah.
there a little bit.
They started their season pretty well, too, so it's a little disappointing to see it decline so much.
Well, you were looking at the All-Star break. We were only down like 2 games
Yeah.
from first place in the division. So it's
Yeah.
like we're in it to win it. And then by the time Brown season started, we were basically out of the running. So it's like that
Yep.
traction you said like was definitely dead by the time the Browns kicked off.
Or even, like, the Twins are, like, the only team with, like, a pretty decent record in the AL
And I
Central.
still think it's a losing record.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe they're
If
500.
any year to like somehow have a mediocre year and pull it around, it just seems like they kind of fallen short of the mark.
Yeah.
Well, even too, like, I know it hasn't officially been announced yet, but there's a lot of rumors of Terry Francona retiring, so it's a little sad if his season kind of ends this way.
Yeah.
So hopefully, maybe he'll stick it out another year and can end in a better way for him. But otherwise, I mean, he had a lot of
Yeah.
good moments with the team, so.
I just pull up the stats now. I mean, we're 9 games out at this point.
I think last
Yeah.
night
Twins.
literally sealed it. We only have 9 games left. So
Yeah.
the best I think we could do is tie them.
Unrelated to performance, but the Cavs do a lot of cool promotions too, though. Like, they have all sorts of people come out to the games and everything too. Like, I know we get a lot of like celebrities that come into town for the games, specifically with the Cavs, which I would say personally, I feel like they're the best shot at succeeding out of all the Cleveland sports
Yeah.
in a season. I mean, they did pretty good last season. It definitely could have ended better. But I feel like they've had a steady improvement season to season, especially since getting Donovan Mitchell. So
That's what I was going to say is since I'm drawing a blank on the coach's name.
JB Bickerstaff.
Yeah, since Bickerstaff has been there, they've improved every season.
yes.
And so it's only up.
No, and it's so fun to go to the games because they're normally like, I feel like there's a lot of action with basketball, but also I feel like it's very highly competitive. Like, we have a lot of all-stars on our team, kind of fly under the radar. Like, a lot of the like ESPN talk shows and people kind of like count the Cavs out a lot of the times, but I feel like we're slowly creeping up. Like, could be big playoff contenders. They got the new in-season tournament that they're starting this year too.
That'll be interesting to see how that
so
plays out.
I'm curious, to see how that works.
I'm interested to see was the goal of that kind of just like to try to get like a soccer format?
I think the goal generally, I don't know if they said it specifically, was just to get viewership up during the season because, I mean, it's been declining, but normally, obviously, like the
Especially
playoffs.
like mid-season.
Yeah, the playoffs is the peak of NBA viewership, but I even saw last season it was down a lot from the past couple years. Like, people aren't tuning in for the playoffs anymore let alone like the finals. So I think they're trying to boost it mid-season to get people hyped up and then hopefully keep them through the playoffs and all of the conference finals and the actual finals. But I think it'll be cool to see, because I kind of thought the same thing where I'm like, are players really even going to be invested in this? Like, but I think the money is the only thing that they think is going to drive people. But is that enough?
Yeah, I don't even know. I was always they should have done, what I would have done is like make it like a playoff that ran simultaneously with the regular playoffs, but it was
Okay.
just like the bottom teams. So like if you were in the
Yeah.
draft lottery, like whoever, you would go into like this off-season tournament, and then the winner would get the first pick.
I guess maybe they felt like they were doing that with their whole like I'm blanking what they're calling it, but how they have
Tanking?
like the bracket thing at the end, like it's like the 7 and 8 play each other and then the 9
yeah,
and 10.
like the play-in.
Yes, the play-in tournament. Yeah, I feel like that was their way of trying to like include something like that, but I don't know if it really hit the mark.
Mm-mm.
And also, it kind of just like frustrates me. Like I know the Cavs were in, I think the 7 spot not this past season, but like the season before, and they got knocked out. So I'm like, I feel like it should just be the top 8 teams because then we could have got in.
Yeah.
So it's kind of frustrating when your team is in it, but it is fun to watch because I guess it gives the bottom teams a chance to make it. But then it also kind of feels like their whole season before that like wasn't really worth anything,
Yeah.
especially if you're the 7 or 8
Yeah.
and you got to play the 9
You
or 10
would have
to
been
get
in a couple years ago, but
Yeah.
now it's like
So
you lose 2 games and you're out.
yep.
Well, you were talking about like that tournament to like determine who gets the number 1 pick would actually be a really interesting, like,
It'd be fun.
especially because you look at teams tanking, and I mean Cleveland knows its fair share of tanking in its
Yeah,
past.
for sure.
And so you just look at a team tanking, and they're not trying to win. And
Exactly.
It's just one of the most frustrating things maybe for a sports fan, especially Cleveland sports fans.
So I did pull it up, and there is like a whole breakdown of the prizing for the players and the winners. So the in-season tournament prize pool is allocated to the players on the teams that participate in the knockout rounds, and then the allocations increase depending on how far the team progresses through the tournament. So there's like payout for a majority of the teams, and then it just increases as they get to like the finals of the tournament. And then there's also going to be an in-season MVP and an in-season... Oh, wait, no, that's the only one. It's just they're going to have a most valuable player. So that's kind of cool, I guess. But it's also weird, too, because it's like there's MVP, like, general. Then there's going to be one for the in-season. Then there's going to be one for the finals. So that's kind of... I don't know.
Well, and my question is, if this was to increase viewership, there's no incentive for the fans to watch this over just, like, the regular season
Yeah.
games, Like...
Maybe the only thing is because
It's
a
just a
lot of
different
these
format.
games are going to be broadcast on more national. Because I know at least with Cavs, it's really hard to watch a Cavs game. You get League Pass blacked out for local teams. So I know Bally Sports had some sort of stuff with the Cavs, but I saw that they were going bankrupt. So I don't know if they're...
In the next year, I don't know where I'm going to
Broadcasting.
watch any Cleveland sports.
Yeah, literally.
I mean, I know at the moment they're still broadcasting Guardians games, but yeah,
We'll
I've
see
heard
by
I've heard
basketball.
conflicting reports on the future.
I even saw Mayor Bibb posted something last season with the Cavs and was like, hey, like, why is it impossible to watch a Cavs game? Like, I live in Cleveland. Kind of called them out. So,
I think speaking to like the fans, like viewership as a whole and like incentivizing fans to watch. I don't know if the mid-season tournament is their way of trying to, answer that.
yeah, I'd be curious to see all, like, the statistics with it, like, with viewership and everything after it happens, or maybe they'll release it towards the end of the season. But I definitely want to go out to a game just to see, like, the vibe, because I've been to some playoff games in the past, and, like, conference games when the Cavs won. I went to a couple. But I would be curious to see if it matches up to that, or if the crowd doesn't care and is just treating it like a regular
Yeah.
season game. If they're gonna do like rally towels, are we doing T-shirts, stuff like that too? Because that gets people hyped and it kind of like emphasizes like the playoff aspect of things.
Like, if
So,
there's going to be that intensity of, like, a game
Yeah.
that means something versus, like, just a run-of-the-mill regular season
Yeah.
game.
Actually, thinking of that television aspect, I never really see CSU games ever
Yeah.
really televised, and I think that also plays into
Yeah, a little bit.
student viewership or students going to games. I
I
just
think
don't.
the only time where for the tournament for women's basketball, I think they were on TV maybe once.
Yeah. Like, they do a little bit of it, but a lot of it's, like, from last year, I think it was, like, on ESPN3, which is, like, an online-only
Yeah.
version of ESPN.
That's the same for how they do it with the Charge. There's sometimes they're on ESPN2, but most of the time it's ESPN3 or it's like an online only thing because they are broadcast. So again, I guess it's more of a reason to be in the city and we can actually go to those events. But I do think that having more exposure, like with broadcast, could bring more people out to games for sure.
Or if there was a way that like we could broadcast the games ourselves. Like, do we not have like a website or of some sort of like portal
100%.
that like you could just log in with your
Just
CSU
through
ID
CSU.
and watch the game there
Yeah.
potentially? I had an idea while we were talking. Do you guys have a favorite Cleveland sports memory?
Oh.
I mean, it's got to be. It might be the same for all of it. It's got to be that 2016 Cavs
Yeah.
championship.
The
You know,
parade.
LeBron, Cleveland. This was for you.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Did you guys go to the parade?
I was in Florida at the time.
Oh.
So I remember watching it on TV and being like, poor LeBron, he's got his whole family in this little car and just like the whole crowd is just
I
like,
was so close to him.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. I was so surprised that they let him get that close, personally.
Yeah, I was sitting with my dad. We got up at like 7 a.m. and came downtown, and we had to park like, I don't know, it was somewhere off of Superior, like really far, and we walked to the Galleria, like right where the Winking Lizard is on 9th,
Mhm.
and we sat outside of there all day. I remember there was like a U-Haul truck parked in like the little thing, and people were sitting on top of it. People just kept climbing on top of the U-Haul truck, and it caved in.
No way.
Yeah, and then like the police had to come over, and then there's like it's some federal building across the street, and it has like gaps in it, and people were climbing up and like standing in the gaps of the building so they could get a better view. It was like the most wild thing I've ever been a part of.
I mean, what was the reported number? It's like 1.3 million
Yeah.
people downtown,
The
right? Like,
aerial pictures are insane.
That's what I was about to say.
love
They
those
look
pictures.
crazy.
Yeah.
Personally, I feel like that was good. I remember it was LeBron's first stint with the Cavs. There was a game against like the Orlando Magic where he just hit like 2 seconds left.
I
Hit
was
almost like
there.
a half-court shot
Yeah.
to
I was at
win
that
that
game with my dad.
Oh, that game was crazy. I was just
It was
on my
so
couch.
good.
Nobody was awake, and I like screamed at the top of my
Yeah.
lungs. Just like
It was
jumped up, hit the
perfect.
fan above me because I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, I was at that game, and I remember that part, but I don't really remember much else. But another thing I thought of that I really liked was the All-Star, NBA All-Star being here
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago.
Couple, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did some stuff at the
2022.
Wolstein Center for that.
I went to the celebrity game. That was really fun. And then I went to like, they had like an interactive exhibit across from the city hall, which was really cool. Isaac Okoro was there from the Cavs. Colin Sexton was there because he was still on the Cavs at the time. Jerseys that were from Kobe and Michael Jordan. And I got to take a picture with the Larry O'Brien trophy. So that was cool.
It's pretty dope.
Yeah, it was just like at a little table. And then they had those 75th anniversary. So they had those diamond balls. That was like the whole thing, like the diamond basketball. And it
Yeah.
had like the logo was like the diamond with the, yeah.
And it's always nice seeing like, you know, like you see East Fourth like booming. You
Yeah.
see all those like downtown businesses, like people like coming from out of state, coming, you know, kind of helping those businesses out. So I think it's always good it's always just like fun to have, you know, those Cleveland centered
Yes.
events.
Because Cleveland, I feel like it gets a lot of hate, but like it's a
It
very
does.
walkable city. Like we have a lot to offer. So I feel like having those kind of events here is kind of good to highlight our sports scene because, like, we'll be honest, we all know our teams aren't always the greatest. So it's kind of cool for people to just see, like, it's not really about how the team's performing. The atmosphere and the fans and everything here is like a huge part of what makes it so great.
Something I grew up in Florida, so my experience with Cleveland up until like 4 years ago was those the Cleveland videos. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where it's like a song like "It's Cleveland."
I feel like I do.
You probably heard it before. It's like
Okay.
at least we're not Detroit.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those
yeah.
ones. So I was like, man, Cleveland must like not be that great.
Yeah.
But then like coming here and actually going downtown and seeing everything that it has to offer, like Cleveland is super underrated.
Yes, for sure.
Celebrities, like when they talk about coming to Cleveland, they always say that same thing where it's like, I heard conflicting things and then I came here and I actually enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a lot different than
Yeah.
advertised initially. It's important to shine a light on the things that we love about Cleveland and share the passion behind this industrious city. We at The Stater hope you enjoyed this episode and we'll hope you'll tune into future episodes of Why I Love the Land.